A Light in the Darkness Chapter 34, Fan Fiction by Azazyel. As soon as our Sect's fate dragon flew us into the scope of the Sect's primary array system, I already set up the dragon dissipated into motes of golden light after rushing around so soon after its birth in order to rest. Jake, what options do we have? Elesmere asked as a small army of misshapen abominable warp monsters ran themselves into the telekinetic wards that surrounded the Sect. After a moment of thought, I decided that using the energy within the sun array to project a young attribute sun atop the Sect's central pagoda to further weaken, if not kill, the demons around me was the right plan, even if it would stress that array in particular. I will overdraft the sun array for now. In the worst case, we retreat into the Sect hall and then into the treasury room where we can hop into Elesmere and blast the mountain to pieces. I said with a frown, as already some demons managed to pierce the telekinetic barrier, I made to dissuade the wildlife and such as a stopgap before I could make a more robust array system. With a roar of spreading fire, the beach ball-sized ball of flames orbiting around the top of the pagoda moved up above the tower-like structure and grew greatly in size. And in response, I saw the eldritch horrors screech in pain as the harsh, unforgiving rays of light drowned them in the sun's extreme heat. Even as a number of the demons simply fell to the ground as desiccated husks, a larger number of demons were able to power through the withering, all-consuming heat of my young attribute sun, though it was obvious that such effort was weakening them. I am going in. Stay back and control the array system like I showed you. I said, and Elesmere knew all too well that coming into contact with me when I went full demon slayer mode was mind-crushingly debilitating for her when I activated my heavenly demon swallowing art. I literally devoured all energies of the warp around myself, even violently ripping her Pisker energies away from her, with her completely unable to resist my actions. Yes, but be careful, as even if they are basic warp demons unfit to be tied to the four pillars, they still bear teeth and claws that may get past your hide, Elesmere said cryptically, and I nodded as I understood the gist of what she meant. With a sword coated in shining sword chi in one hand and the already thirsty Kasaya beads that were riding along my arm, I began to use my cultivation art, with streams of purple gas being absorbed into my body while I advanced upon the demons. Shadow domain open. I said with a maddening reverberation in my voice as I stomped heavily on the ground, sending an inky pool of darkness spreading from myself. Your master calls upon you. Feast upon your brethren and grow in strength under my blessings. With my orders, the pool of darkness under my feet seemed to thicken and rise from the ground with hip-sized monsters of all shapes and sizes. But most prominently, I saw the demon that devoured the leader of the bandits oh so long ago, was as tall as me with a humanoid form but had some reptilian or maybe even dragonoid features, with its shadowy form having a large tail behind it and scale-covered claws for hands. You have grown, I see, I muttered as I saw most of the demons were newly converted from my infinitesimally tiny domain within the warp, but that one, I previously noticed, was definitely one I had summoned previously. Shadowy creatures met warp monstrous creatures in a furious exchange of tooth and claw, of bone weaponry against solidified shadowy weaponry. I myself dashed into the heat of battle with my heavenly demon swallowing art literally ripping the life force and existence out of the nearby demons, and those that could resist my aura of death to their ilk were met with a sword that could cut through bone or other primitive weaponry as though it wasn't there. Or were otherwise pulped, thrashed, or diced into pieces by my frantic Kasaya beads that gorged itself on the freely flowing blood with the beads of the bracelet growing stronger, larger, and spawning even more beads with horrific implements on the beads to cause harm against everyone except me that they brushed up against. Literally, one of the beads was completely covered in sandpaper-covered fishhook, and there was nothing more metal than seeing a 10-meter-long alligator-shaped demon that was shooting lasers out of its eyes get literally fully flayed of its skin by another of the beads covered in razor-sharp X-Acto knives that vibrated at high speeds. But that was the advantage to having an artifact weapon that was semi-sentient. It was fully capable of slaughtering your enemies while you were busy focusing on another more pressing foe. Human. We challenge you. A voice roared with pure violence being emanated from their every step. Their killing intent was as heavy as a heavy buffeting wind to my senses, but the only thing I could do was laugh. I could only laugh in the face of a squad of 8 or so bloodletters thinking they were hot shit. Come then, little bloodletters. I will take your fucking skulls and make a chamber pot out of them. I roared with the demons of Khorne, likewise screeching in a primal fury at the sacrilege I was speaking of their ways. I met the first bloodletter with a wave of sword chi that blasted it back past its followers, and while my Kasaya beads took on another 3 more, I handled another 2 with my sword arts, while, surprisingly, the more humanoid shadow demon in my retinue took on the last bloodletter on its own. Korn bless us with strength. The monster in front of me hissed, and I only scoffed as I ducked under its sword swing that attempted to take my head off. As I said before, I will be the one taking skulls here, I said while I lashed out a flame-covered kick that all but evaporated its legs, and then I brought down the hilt of my sword in crushing blow that squished in the demon's long head to almost a human-shaped one with its cranial fluids dripping out of its mangled flesh. Even as I stepped towards the other demons that I managed to push aside for my swift solo duel with that one bloodletter, I felt the dense chaotic energies of its corpse breaking apart behind me as it became a dense red-toned purple mist that filled my body with strength, recovering the spiritual energy I already spent, as well as just generally enhancing my cultivation with how it was a demon of minuscule note. With one dead, I was able to swiftly kill the other 2 demons I was left with, before going to smite down the bloodletter that was getting the better of my own shadow solider. But either way, I left that corpse alone for the shadow to consume as I finally helped assist corral my Kasaya beads kill the demons it had been fighting. Looking around, I saw with the deaths of the bloodletters that the other demons had either fled or finally just keeled over and died under the influence of my cultivation art sucking the life out of them and the small sun hanging over the mountain burning away all that was impure. Well, that sun should be a good enough advertisement to anyone who may be interested in joining, I muttered as I dismissed my Shadow Realm summoning as the shadows took the corpses of the warp entities away to the tiny pocket I had made in the warp with the technique. Time to get back to Elesmere, I said as I finally pushed my sword back into my chest and my Kasaya beads shrank down as they removed the dangerous implements they were using to hug my arm.